But what I'm actually watching for is a potential downtrending slope because of the fact that we've had this blow off top that we talked about at the end of February. Remember, it said it was just looking very vertical, like a blow off top. Well, we saw a bit of a retracement. Now we've tried to get back up to those 2400 area, and we're failing, and we're pulling back once more. So what I'm doing is I'm just hypothesizing that potentially there's a downtrending slope starting. I've drawn in an Andrews fork. You can see that it actually doesn't look too bad here in terms of support. We actually do have 2 touches at support. That doesn't make it a validated slope, but I am watching. If we look at it on a 240 and draw in that very same line, let's make sure that's anchored. So there's the line right there. And again, you can see that we have 2 nice little touches based upon the downtrending slope. So I'm going to keep an eye on this slope. I'm not convinced it's in any way validated, but if we sort of run into resistance, something like this, up around the 2380 area, we'd already had 1 touch, 2nd touch on this particular line, but yesterday, in fact yesterday morning we were there, we actually dipped down, tagged it a 3rd time before moving back to the upside. So I find it somewhat interesting that we actually tagged this particular line here that we'd already hit twice a 3rd time. And now we're up from 66 to 74, about 8 points. What I'm going to be watching for, as I said, I want to see whether we get resistance up around 2377. And you can see just how well that works out. Look at it on a 240, looks pretty good. Look at it on a 60, looks pretty good. Again, we'd already had 2 touches on top of support. Let me draw all the circles back in again. Then we got the 3rd one on, I believe it was Monday. So on Tuesday morning, we were looking for resistance up in this area here. Bang, down we go. And then what I started paying attention to, and I think I looked at this yesterday, was that we had bottomed in what I would call a logical place. Because if you look at the prior low, we had bottomed in a logical place. So I wanted to see whether we get some traction up into about this area here, 2363. ES. I think we might have hit resistance, and so that's what I'm paying attention to right now. And in fact, we were touching, or pretty much touching, this particular resistance on the webinar. We were at 2355 yesterday when we were carrying out the noon webinar. And I said at the time, I think we're at resistance. And sure enough, that worked out very, very well. Down we go. Took a tumble from 23.55, been down to as low as 38. So nearly 20 points to the downside. That's working out quite well. I think really for today, there's not too much I can add. The slope is just working beautifully. I will watch for resistance in this area right here. eMini S&P. This worked incredibly well all week. Think about what we were looking at. In fact, it worked from even Tuesday, to be fair. So Monday was a bit of a non-day. We kind of like ground up in a little bit into resistance. But Tuesday, if you recall, I had said to look for resistance around 2377 for a downtrending slope, which we had already drawn in the prior week. We'd paid attention to the fact that we'd had 2 bounces. We then got our 3rd bounce, kind of making the slope somewhat validated. I still would have preferred to have seen more resistance as well to really validate it. But regardless, it worked very well. 2377. Big tumble, 77 down to 33, 44 points to the downside. And then what I started watching was on the Wednesday and Thursday videos that we were at support. In fact, I think it was Wednesday. Watching the fact that we were at support down this area here, looking for a leg back to the upside. And what I was looking for, if you recall, was a move back up into this area here. And that worked out pretty much bit perfect. Up around 23.55. I talked about this on the webinar Thursday, and I said I thought we were at resistance, and I said it on Thursday morning, and I also said it on the noon webinar Thursday. Sure enough, we see a nice push to the downside. From 55, we went down to about 38. And what I said on Friday morning was, well, let's look for the same thing again. Look for resistance in this area here. And again, it worked out very well. So our first resistance was 23.55. Second time we came up to it was 23.51. If you were so inclined, you could have taken an entry in this area right here with your stop up above the prior high, something like that. Again, we fell from 51 down to as low as 31, so another 20 points to the downside.